All right, class, now we are on section 2 of chapter 10, and the title of this one is Properties of Sound. And you need to write down the loudness of a sound depends on its intensity, and the pitch of a sound depends on its frequency. Two totally different things. You do not need KWL. So intensity and loudness, write down the page number next to it, and let's just talk for a second. What happens to the sound waves from your radio when you adjust the volume? The notes sound the same as when the volume was higher, but something about the sound changes. The difference is that quieter sound waves do not carry as much energy as louder sound waves do. So write down that first bullet point. Second bullet point, the amount of energy a wave carries corresponds to its amplitude. And bullet 3, for a longitudinal wave, remember the slinky going back and forth, one with compression, amplitude is related to how close together the particles are that make up the compressions and the rarefications. So, intensity and loudness, page number. First bullet point. When an object vibrates strongly with a lot of energy, it makes sound waves with tight, dense compressions. And when an object vibrates with low energy, it makes sound waves with loose and less dense compressions. So if we take a look at the picture, you do not need to write it down, but you do need to write third bullet point that there was an image that you need to see in your textbook and write down the page number that it can be found. You can see the difference between a high amplitude. Here we have a high amplitude, and let's take a look at our compressions here compared to our compressions here. The compressions here are spread out a lot more, and these are packed together more tightly. That's because this is a high amplitude where there's lots of energy, okay? So more energy, less energy. The density of particles that make up the rarefication behaves in the opposite way. First bullet point. It is important to remember that matter is not transported during the compression and rarefication of a longitudinal wave. Only energy is transported. Remember when we talked about waves last chapter, what do waves carry? They don't carry things, they carry energy. Next bullet point, the matter compresses and expands as the wave passes through that medium. Intensity is the amount of energy that is transferred across a certain area in a specific amount of time. The first bullet point, do not write it down. We're just going to talk about it. When you turn down the volume of your radio, you reduce the energy carried by sound waves. So you also reduce their intensity. I do want you to write down the second bullet point. Intensity influences how far away a sound can be heard. So just talking, if you and a friend whisper a conversation, the sound waves you create have a low intensity and do not travel far. You have to sit closer together to hear each other. One of the things you need to write down, sound intensity decreases with distance for two reasons. The first reason, the energy that a sound wave carries spreads out as the sound wave spreads out. And second, some of a sound wave's energy converts to other forms of energy, usually thermal energy, as the sound wave travels through matter. Next heading, loudness, and write down the corresponding page number. Loudness is the human perception of sound volume and depends primarily on sound intensity. For example, when your parents listen to this, your parents don't really think that the volume is really that intense. That's what they call it, the loudness. It's just not that intense. However, when your parents hear you listening to this, They may say, hey, turn it down, because to them, it's just too intense. So, first bullet point, when sound waves of high intensity reach your ear, they cause your eardrum to move back and forth a greater distance than sound waves of a low intensity. Second bullet point, the bones of the middle ear convert the increased movement of the eardrum into increased movement of the hair cells in the inner ear, and as a result, you hear a loud sound. A scale for loudness, write that down, and the page number you can find this. So each unit on the scale for sound intensity is what we call a decibel, abbreviated lowercase d, capital B. First bullet point on this scale, the faintest sound that most people can hear is 0 decibels. And sounds with intensity levels above 120 decibels often cause pain. Pitch, add the textbook page number. It's how high or low a sound seems to be. So if you were to sing a scale, your voice would start low, oh, and become higher with each note. The pitch of a sound is related to the frequency of the sound wave. So frequency and pitch measure of how many wavelengths pass a particular point each second. And I misspoke, that's just frequency. So the first bullet point for that is a longitudinal wave, such as sound. The frequency is the number of compressions or the number of rarefications that pass by each second. We measure frequency in hertz, capital H, lowercase z. Third bullet point, when a sound wave with high frequency hits your ear, many compressions hit your eardrum each second. Bam, 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 kind of like that. Next bullet point, your brain interprets these fast vibrations caused by high frequency waves as a sound with a high pitch, like a woman's voice. As the frequency of a sound wave decreases, the pitch becomes lower. So for those of you who are in band and love it, or perhaps even choir, I can take C, okay, on any instrument, and if it's a little bit sharp, that's going to be a higher frequency, and if it's a little more flat, it's going to have a lower frequency. So this figure shows different notes and their frequencies. So in your book, write down figure and what page number you'll see. A healthy human ear, you need to know this, can hear a sound wave with frequencies from about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. The human ear is most sensitive to sounds in the range of 440 to about 7,000 hertz.
Every note has a different frequency, which gives it a distinct pitch.
Now let's talk about the Doppler effect. It's not just for weather, okay? So Doppler effect textbook page number. The change in a pitch or wave frequency due to a moving wave source is called the Doppler effect, and it occurs when the source of a sound wave is moving relative to a listener.
The Doppler effect occurs when the source of a sound wave is moving relative to a listener. The race car creates compression A, which spreads through the air in all directions from the point where it was created. The car is closer to the flagger when it creates compression B. Compressions A and B are closer together in front of the car, so the flagger hears a higher pitched sound.
So a moving observer. The Doppler effect happens anytime the source of a sound is changing position compared with the observer. It occurs no matter whether it is the sound source or the observer that is moving. The faster the change in distance, the greater change in frequency and pitch. Everybody's heard a fire truck, a police car, an ambulance, right? Same type of deal. So using the Doppler effect, it also occurs for other waves besides sound waves. For example, the frequency of electromagnetic waves, which will be our next chapter, radio waves. Radar guns use the Doppler effect to measure the speed of cars, and weather radar also uses the Doppler effect to show movement of winds and storms such as tornadoes.
Hey, Sheldon, there's something I want to talk to you about before we go to the park.
I don't care if anybody gets it. I'm going as the Doppler Effect.
No, it's not.
If I have to, I can demonstrate. So what time does the costume parade start?
The parade?
Yeah, so the judges can give out the prizes for best costume. You know, most frightening, most authentic, most accurate visualization of a scientific principle.
Oh, Sheldon, I'm sorry, but there aren't going to be any parades or judges or prizes.
This party is just going to suck.
Oh, come on, it's going to be fun, and you all look great. I mean, look at you, Thor, and oh, Peter Pan, that's so cute.
Actually, Penny, he's wrong.
I'm Peter Pan!
I hate what Sheldon's supposed to be.
Oh, he's the Doppler Effect.
Yes. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer. It's the apparent change in the frequency of a wave caused by relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer.
Oh, sure, I see it now, the Doppler Effect.
Okay, so just like before, I showed you 3 different clips. In your notes, you need to give me a tidbit about each one of those video clips. I'll be checking that, and it will be for a grade. Until next time.